the juke joint represents the safe space the way the black church does.
Because there's not a monolithic, homogenous aspect of black
people. Forget that DEI really was supposed to be a corrective to 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow.
Who wore a purse, but their money was in their bra.
That still goes on now.
Y'all Rev'd Up podcast, one of the 15 top WGBH podcasts on the web.
This is Y'all Rev'd Up podcast, season 9, episode 2, and I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, usually we banter back and forth about an evergreen topic before we get into deep conversation, but I can't think of anything light during this season of heaviness. I mean...
I'm sorry.
I mean, it's crazy out here in these here streets.
Well, you know, it's so interesting. We did a segment on hope. So let's not let the hope that we shared with our audience dim your hope.
Look at you. Look at you. Look at you. We did flip seat. We can flip seats here.
Yeah. But there's much, you know what? There's much to be hopeful about.
Yeah,
one is that our topic that we're going to discuss today, it's celebrating its 100th anniversary. And the fact that we're talking about endurance. No better people to talk about endurance than to talk about black people.
We know that. Well, before we jump into this conversation on the endurance of black history, we must pause and thank our sponsors. Us. As well as Africana Studies at Berkeley and the Black Christian Experience Resource Center. Thank you so much for taking the risk on two loving pastors with something to say. We especially thank each of our listeners and viewers. We are here because of you. Thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the actual live recording of the podcast on your YouTube channel, our YouTube channel. Thank you for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, your comments. Thank you so much for sharing the podcast with others.
And I would be remiss if I didn't come with my tsunami of thanks to our loyal listeners and a heartfelt welcome to our new ones. Thank you for being our motivator and the reason for bringing out the best in us. With each episode, we hope to ignite your curiosity, foster deep understanding and conversations even among yourself. Again, thank you. But lastly, but certainly not least of all, I want to offer a tsunami of thanks to the creative genius of our producers, Carla Wright and Cavante Small. We couldn't be what we be, Emmett, without them. Ain't that right?
That's right. That is right.
Chasing rod felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading the path through the blood of the soul.
100 years ago, the Virginia-born son of former enslaved Dr. Carter Goodwin Woodson had the courage to launch Negro History Week. It was February of 1926. His goal was to teach Americans about the significant accomplishments, dynamic hopes, and the absolute investment of black people in this nation. The Berea College and University of Chicago graduate was the second black person to achieve the PhD in history at Harvard University after Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. As a dues-paying member of the American Historical Association, who, by the way, could not attend the conferences due to him being black, he decided to found the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915, and it continues to exist and thrive today. Irene, talk to me about the endurance of Black history?
You know, when I was thinking about this episode, I immediately thought about Dr. Carter Woodson. And I was saying, I wonder, what would he think today, knowing that his seed that started with the notion that we should archive our history, and then the audacity to say, listen, I want us to celebrate it for at least a week, and then get a week. It started with a week, and now it's a month, and it's a national holiday. I am so proud to know that, yes, we endure in spite of the obstacles. I think about it in so many ways. He was born 10 years after the Civil War, 1975. And so, you know, when we think about that whole era here, there's a treasure trove of information that wasn't archived. But he thought about this, that what do we do with the history of who we are? I think what I love about this is that it is still a contentious subject today. And it's interesting the various ways in which conservatives, white conservatives in particular, have fought against the history of Black folks. They've called it identity politics, remember, special rights. Then we saw the actual, gradual, I would say, dismantling of affirmative action. And then the audacity that once Obama took office, that we were post-racial.
Post-racial, yeah.
Okay. When that didn't last, they criticized critical race theory, now DEI. So when I look at that, we have always found a way to maintain what society has subjugated. This is subjugated knowledge to folks. We've heard folks say, I've never heard of the Tuskegee, Tuskegee Airmen. I've never heard of the Tulsa riots. I never knew of the Green Book. And so I find it very wonderful that, 100 years out, and we got to look at this in particularly that this year, 2026, we look at the 250th anniversary of what they call American history. Okay. And I say that very skeptically, 250 years of white American history, but yet we were able to, for at least 100 years, keep our history in public face. I'm just amazed by it, and as we know here, Trump has tried to cancel Black history. And the hubris behind this was that two things. One is that we are sharing this history with folks who never knew about it, like Juneteenth, certainly Black History Month. So I'm just happy that I think about this man born 10 years after the Civil War and how he blossomed into this just wonderful historian that, like W.E.B. Du Bois, we honor not just one day, but every day.
I mean, first of all, let's check this out. This dude had a doctorate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so, I mean, parents were enslaved.
That's right.
And he ascended to perhaps the greatest institution of higher learning, particularly in the time when he did it.
That's right.
And so the other thing is he begins Negro History Week while Black people were still being lynched.
That's right.
Right, in the 1920s.
That's
now,
right.
I like to think about it this way. If there wasn't anything to be erased, then there would be no erasure. So the fact that in 2026, some people are still trying to erase the brilliant history of phenomenal human beings who not only have the resilience and brilliance and hope of possibility, but who have inspired the world exponentially to think about a better day to come. So if there wasn't anything that was significant already there, then there wouldn't be this thing to try
to erase it. You're so right here.
So I mean, what are we really dealing with here?
Yeah, but Woodson did this, and I think that this was bold. And I need to say this. I was very surprised that it was even published. He wrote in 1933. Now this is during certainly the Depression era. And the interesting thing is we got to understand this. He wrote this book, The Miseducation of the Negro. This was published in 1933. And the reason why I say this, because you brought up Jim Crow. We have 250 years. This is what I find interesting if we look at the numbers here. You're a math major like I am. You have 250 years of slavery. And America this year is celebrating its 250th anniversary. I mean, just look at this, okay? So here we are at the 100th anniversary of actually publicly celebrating Black History Month. But with that 250 years of slavery, we've had 90 years, come on now, of Jim Crow. So that's why I find this so interesting. And then after that, we had 60 years of separate but equal. I find this so interesting because he understood the need to elevate Black history from a negligible factor of American history, and to recognize its important contributions, not just here on this soil, but internationally. As many have understood, when we look at Carter Woodson in particular, he's the precursor to Afrocentrism, because he had the audacity to say that we're going to put Black women in the center of this history. That we're going to do this, and we're going to analyze from the viewpoint of Black people. That is very, very radical. And listen, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm surprised that they haven't gone after him. When he wrote the book, The Miseducation of the Negro, I had to reread it again because I couldn't believe it, that he had one chapter that says how we drift away from the truth. I said, no, he didn't. But listen, he's been challenging, alternative facts. Truth is not truth. Fake news long before we have.
I mean, think about this. Now, the way that they went after King after he was dead in the grave for decades was to accuse him of plagiarism. The way that they went after Claudine Gay, Claudine Gay, was to accuse her of plagiarism. Now, who you going to accuse Dr. Carter Goodwin Woodson of plagiarizing?
Yeah,
right?
I'm surprised they haven't, though.
I mean, they can try, right? And they may teach us something. Maybe there were some brothers and sisters who was writing some powerful stuff even before him, and which we know there were.
Yeah, of course they were.
Which we know there were, right?
It's about publication.
And that's it. So I am thinking a lot about the endurance of, these histories which we live and which we breathe. My producer is saying to us, Irene, that we need to take a break. So I'm going to cut us right here. Irene, we'll be right back. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We'll be right back.
The fullness of Black achievement. We can celebrate it every day of the year, and we still won't get to all the people who deserve to be included in the conversation.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and we are back, and I am excited about this topic. Irene, I came in here not feeling excited about much, and you inspired the hope and the endurance and helping us to think about the fact that we are here. That segment that you just heard a piece of was from season 5, episode 14 of the show Blackish. It's entitled Black History Month, and it ran in February of 2019. And at the top of our episode, you heard these 4 brothers out of Dallas. Their group is called King's Return. And I think you should go find them, go see them live. They're touring. Yeah. And that was their arrangement of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Irene, right before the break, we were talking about, this notion of how we have endured even through the erasure. And I want to also talk about the fact that Black History Month, which is an evolution of Negro History Week, continues to evolve. Because remember, the reason that Dr. Carter G. Woodson picked this specific week in February is because it was anchored by the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And we thought about Abraham Lincoln differently in 1926 than we do now in 2026, today. Right? So there's some even evolution within, of the Black.
But I think that was politics. Let's get with that. I think that was when you think about publishing, I just need to say this. Maybe in order to do that, you know how sometimes you got to throw even your opponent a bone here. So you couldn't have two. Let's be honest. Couldn't have two. Look, you couldn't have had. He couldn't say it doesn't fall in it, but he couldn't say I'm honoring Booker T
And
and
Frederick Douglass,
Frederick Douglass. Now you always have to throw a white person in there.
Well,
So let's be
tell the
honest
truth about that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's that backstory. That's that subjugated knowledge that if we could go back in history and say Carter, Woodson. Now, how'd you put Lincoln in here? Because you were closer to the history than we were, because we had to excavate the history. You heard the oral stories about it. Why did you do this? And I always feel like it has something to do with publishing.
In the nomenclature, or shall I say the colloquialism of contemporary young people, they'd have been like, bro.
Yeah, what's up? What's up?
Right?
Yeah.
What's interesting, and you brought this up, and we're going to do a little show and tell in a second, but one of the powerful things about Black history is that it's not only spoken, it's not only oral tradition, but it's written.
That's right.
And we've had some phenomenal human beings, learned folks who have
unlearned.
Well, I do this because learned doesn't mean just from the ivory tower, from the educational institutions.
That's right.
We have folks who are
slave narratives.
I mean,
come on now, slave narratives.
But people who had the courage to say it and to say it loud and to write it down. You know what I mean?
And what we understand. See, writing, particularly within a Eurocentric lens, is a very radical act.
Yes.
I need to say this because what it does is saying two things. My life is sacred text, and I'm writing myself in existence since you won't. Okay, so it's agency, it's resistance, and it's also about not only survival, but for future generations here. I leave you this text. Here, it's like it becomes like our sacred text, like the Bible. I leave you this text because I want this history passed on.
So let's do some show and tell here. Let's do
some show and tell with our books.
I got three of some older books and three male authors, and you have three newer books, but three female authors, women authors. So the first one is Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folk. I'm gonna just leave it there for it, so you can take a pic. And this is old. Look out the color of the pages.
The pages are yellow.
The second one here is another classic. They Came Before Columbus, right? Ivan Van Sertima, classic, legendary. And the third one that I'm pulling from is Stolen Legacy. George,
oh my God,
James. I mean, phenomenal book, phenomenal reading. Y'all check these out. Irene, what you bringing to us?
Okay, so I'm bringing here the Black Book. This was published by Toni Morrison in the 70s, and I bring this out particularly because she's the first Black editor at Random House. And the sketches in here and some of the diary fragments and excerpts go back to 1700s. One of which was the catalyst for her book Beloved, where a mother who killed her baby, and the excerpts of the original text is here. Then I'm doing this one. We mentioned Jim Crow, and then Michelle Alexander came out with the new Jim Crow, and that is what Emmett, the industrial prison complex here. Complex here. So that's the new slave or new form of slavery. And I had to do this. Isabella Wilkinson cast. Her first book was The Warmth of Other Suns, a phenomenal book about the Black migration up south here. Or I call it up south, as you know, because if you're below the Mason-Dixon line, it's down south. So if you're above it, it's up. But this is cast. And what really made the impetus for this is when King went to India. And he called, the term at the time was an untouchable, that compared to your to your social location as a Black man in America is similar to what was considered the untouchables. They're called the lids now, but and I thought this was very good, and she builds a wonderful narrative around that and stuff. So I think that what we see here, and I just want to say, people don't understand. Not only have we been writing, we've been storing our history, and we've always had bookstores. People got to understand that people sold books out of
the trunk cars.
of their
That's right.
cars because it was subjugated knowledge. Some people printed the books. Printed the books, and we bought them back in the day here. So we've always found creative ways to maintain Black history. And I need to talk about, and I always talk about the veracity of not only of the oral tradition, but of the Chitlin Circuit and Black Twitter. But I got to say this about the Chitlin Circuit. I just need to say this. Strom Thurmond, this is very quick. He was senator of South Carolina. And the Chitlin Circuit said Strom Thurmond has a Black daughter. People said his white family and all of the white senators and reps said can't because he is Mr. Segregation. The day after Strom Thurmond dies, Essie Mae shows up, and they go like, "Oh my God, because he really does," and she looks just like him. So I would just want to talk about the veracity of the Chitlin Circuit, because we tell these stories not just out of gossip, but to keep the history alive.
You always so messy. Cause you always bring out one
little
nugget there, and it's true. I mean, sometimes the most racist, sometimes the most and you go down the list of all the isms and the obias. Sometimes those folks who are spewing all that vitriol are the ones
that's right
sneaking around.
That's
right.
But wait, I got to say one other though. But yes, there are those that talk against us, but those who for us. Biden's got a Black grandchild. Come on now, work with me.
Well,
Biden's got a Black.
Speaking of Biden, I have 3 contemporary Black history nuggets, because before you say your final piece, I mean think about this. We're in the 21st century. So in the 21st century, in 2021, we had our first Black woman vice president in the personhood of Kamala Harris. That's Black history. In 2022, we had our first Black female, Black woman, U.S. Supreme Court Justice in Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Yay!
And in 2023, we had our first openly lesbian Black woman U.S. Senator in LaFonza Butler.
Yay!
Still making Black history.
All right.
Still making Black history.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. Absolutely. And wait, I just got to say this. And speaking about Black history got to do a little better about LGBTQ, because we wouldn't have the LGBT movement, wouldn't have Stonewall, was it not for Marsha P. Johnson. We would not have the March on Washington, was it not for Bayard Rustin. That's all I got to say. I dropped that. Oh, wait. Oh, and we wouldn't have this podcast with Emmett were it not for Reverend Irene.
Say that. Put that out there. All right. You go to finish this off. What you got to say? What you got to say to close up?
Okay. As Black History Month celebrates its 100th anniversary, and this nation celebrates its 250th anniversary, Black History Month stands not as a footnote or a history of the margins, but rather as the marrow woven deep in the soul of America. It's a democratic offering affirming that the story of this nation is richer, stronger, and more truthful when the contribution, struggles, brilliance, genius, and leadership of Black people are fully recognized. In this pivotal moment of America's 250th anniversary, Black History Month challenges selective memory, confront the past for a better future, invite us to meet America at its highest ideals, to breathe life into its promise that all are created equal. And it reminds us that a nation cannot be whole unless it remembers itself fully. The creation of Black History Month was never intended by Dr. Carter Woodson, the father of Black history, to be divisive, but rather to educate all Americans of African American contribution in a shared, though complex history. Our history is rich, rhythmic, resilient, and revolutionary. However, with the deliberate aims to erase Black history, the unending attacks on critical race theory, and the dismantling of all things associated with DEI, we have found ways to preserve our rich stories in perpetuity. Our museums, libraries, bookstores, oral traditions, modern-day griots, and yes, even the Chitlin Circuit and Black Twitter are distinctive Black spaces to preserve the dignity, legacy, as examples, as investments of us. They ensure that our voices, our stories endure, uncensored, unredacted, unerased. Black History Month reminds Americans that those voices and those stories have shaped not only our communities, but in turn, this nation. Amen.
Amen.
And Ashe.
Ashe. All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls. Our sponsors are us and Africana Studies at Berkeley and the Black Christian Experience Resource Center.
Music for this episode is from Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH. If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
And feel free to send us a note, a question, or even a comment to allrevduppod@gmail.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode of All Rev'd Up.